It's hot. You're uncomfortable, so you do the obvious thing. You turn on a fan. Here's what nobody tells you. Past a certain point, that fan stops cooling you down and starts heating you up, not as a figure of speech. Under specific conditions, a fan blowing across your skin doesn't remove heat, it delivers it. And those conditions aren't hypothetical. They already exist in real places where real people live. This is the story of a single number your body cannot argue with. But to see why it matters, you have to understand what your body is actually doing every second that you're hot. Most people think you cool down by sweating. You don't. Not exactly. Sweat is just the delivery system. The thing that actually cools you is evaporation. Sweat turning from liquid into vapor. As it lifts off your skin, it carries your heat away with it. Which means if that sweat can't evaporate, it does nothing. It just sits there. You're wet, and you're still cooking. That's the real reason a humid day is so much worse than a dry one at the exact same temperature. In dry air, sweat evaporates the instant it appears, taking your heat with it. In humid air, the atmosphere is already saturated with moisture, so evaporation slows to a crawl. You feel drenched. You feel smothered. Because you are. Your cooling system is being throttled. And here's the problem. Your body never stops making heat. At rest, you produce roughly 100 watts of it just by being alive. Move around, and that number climbs fast. Every bit of it has to escape. So what happens when the exit gets blocked? Scientists built a way to measure exactly that. It's called wet bulb temperature, and the original tool for it is almost absurdly simple. Take a thermometer, wrap the bulb in a wet cloth, blow air over it. As the water evaporates, it cools the thermometer. And the reading tells you how well evaporation is working right now, in that air. In dry air, the wet bulb reading sits far below the real temperature. Evaporation is easy, but as humidity rises, that gap shrinks. And in fully saturated air, there's no evaporation left. The wet bulb reading and the air temperature become the same number. That's what makes it so important. It doesn't tell you how hot the air is, it tells you whether your body is allowed to cool itself at all. And there's a wet bulb reading past which the answer becomes no. The number people cite is 35 degrees Celsius, wet bulb. The logic is clean. Your skin sits a little below your core temperature of 37 degrees. For heat to leave your body, the air has to be cool enough to accept it. At a wet bulb of 35, the air is so hot and so saturated that evaporation basically stops. Your body keeps producing heat. It keeps trying to sweat, and none of it can go anywhere. Your core temperature starts to rise, not the controlled rise of a fever, but an uncontrolled one. Heat stroke, then organ damage. That's the theoretical limit. But here's the twist. When scientists finally tested it on real people, the number came back lower. In a 2022 experiment at Penn State, researchers put healthy young adults in a heat chamber and pushed the conditions until their bodies could no longer keep up. The limit they found wasn't 35. For many, the danger began closer to 31 degrees wet bulb. And these were young, fit volunteers, which means the famous survival line is drawn in the wrong place. The real one is closer than we thought. And this is where your fan comes back in. In normal heat, a fan helps. It pushes air across your skin and speeds evaporation up. That's the entire point of it. But once the air around you gets hotter than your skin, the fan flips. Now it's driving air that's warmer than you are straight onto your body, and you start absorbing that heat. The fan has quietly turned into a convection heater, pointed at you, pile humidity on top near that wet bulb threshold, and it's the worst case there is. Evaporation has already failed. The fan can't bring it back. All it can do now is speed up how fast that hot air dumps its heat into your skin. And this is documented. Research shows that in very hot, humid conditions, fans can stop protecting people. And for older adults especially, they can actually add to the heat strain instead of relieving it. The thing you reached for to save yourself makes it worse. Now here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. For a long time, a wet bulb of 35 was treated as almost theoretical, a problem for some distant future. It wasn't. A 2020 study found that the threshold, or something dangerously close to it, had already been reached, in South Asia and around the Persian Gulf. The events were brief, hours, not days, but they happened. Back in 2015, a city in Iran recorded a wet bulb near 35, while the air temperature sat around 46 degrees. People were outside. People live there. And remember, the real danger line for most of us is lower than 35 to begin with. For the elderly, for anyone working outdoors in the sun, the body loses this fight much sooner. That's the range where heat actually kills. Europe's 2003 heatwave took more than 70,000 lives, and every year the world spends a little more time inside that range. So, back to the fan. The fan was never the villain. What changed is the world around it. The conditions where a fan stops saving you and starts harming you used to be rare. Now they're spreading into places where the one thing that reliably works above the threshold, air conditioning, isn't something most people can afford or even reach. We talk about the temperature. We talk about drinking water. We almost never talk about the actual wall your body runs into. Below that wall, your body can fight. Above it, no water, no shade, no fan changes anything. The physics have simply closed the door. So the next time it's hot and you reach for that fan, now you know what it's really doing. And when it stops being on your side,